Alors, nous allons procéder avec la période de questions qui ont été transmises par courriel vendredi dernier. La première question, donc, nous vient de Mme Jennifer Ignacio. Bonjour, nous sommes heureux d'avoir un nouveau parc des bénévoles. Cependant, je m'inquiète pour la sécurité dans ce secteur. Pour ceux habitant près de là, il est très commun de voir des voitures stationnées durant de très longues périodes avec des gens à l'intérieur, des allées et retours de gens faisant des transactions douteuses, des groupes de gens qui se rassemblent, l'odeur du cannabis très présente dans les environs. Le bord de l'eau est souvent rempli de bouteilles, canettes de bière, restants de feu, etc., et ce, allant jusqu'au parc Raoul-Lorrain, un autre parc sans aucun entretien et qui attire les gens pour la consommation de drogue et d'alcool. Quel est votre plan pour mettre fin à cette situation? Comment rendre notre quartier plus sécuritaire? Avez-vous des plans d'entretien pour le parc Raoul-Lorrain?
Merci beaucoup, Madame Ignacio, pour la question. On sait très bien la situation sur, dans le fond, la rue Lalande, Rose et les environs, et surtout avec ce beau parc qu'on a construit au port de Plaisance. On sait très bien que ça attire beaucoup de monde, comme c'est le cas un peu partout sur l'île de Montréal, surtout dans les parcs situés aux bordures de la rive. On est déjà depuis quelque temps en communication avec notre commandant et l'SPVM. On sait que la présence de nos policiers ont augmenté sur le territoire. On sait aussi, on a demandé à M. Gignac et son comité de sécurité et circulation routière de vérifier les mesures qu'on peut prendre comme arrondissement pour réduire un peu la vitesse, pas juste sur la Lande, mais aussi les autres rues dans le secteur, incluant Rose. On a mis quelques mesures en place pour corriger cette situation-là. On sait depuis un peu de temps qu'avec nos travaux publics, on a des équipes maintenant complètes. Et on fait la surveillance un peu sur le territoire, pas juste dans ces deux parcs, mais aussi dans d'autres où on a de problèmes de vidange et des gens qui restent là après le 11 heures, le temps où les gens sont permis de rester dans les espaces verts et les parcs. On est en constante communication avec l'SPVM, avec nos services pour améliorer la situation chez vous, mais aussi dans d'autres secteurs. Et je vous demande de continuer de nous donner l'information nécessaire, de nous écrire, soit à moi, à nos services, appelez le 311, le 911 si c'est quelque chose urgente, et l'SPVM va intervenir dans les plus brefs délais. Mais je vous encourage aussi de nous écrire, de communiquer avec moi et le conseil pour voir qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire et de trouver des solutions pour améliorer un peu la situation. Mais une chose est sûre, Madame Ignacio, le problème existe et l'enjeu existe un peu partout sur le territoire, pas juste dans notre arrondissement, mais avec le COVID, avec le nombre de personnes qui sont à l'extérieur, avec la belle température, c'est une situation un peu, je ne vais pas dire impossible de régler, mais un peu difficile de régler si vite. Mais on fait le plus possible pour trouver des solutions et de travailler avec les partenaires d'améliorer un peu la qualité de vie que vous êtes habitués dans votre secteur.
Merci. Madame Sarina Conti. Hello, I was wondering if you were considering adding splash pads to the parks in the Pierrefonds areas west of Saint-Charles. I've noticed all the nice new splash pads are in the Roxboro or past Boulevard Saint-Jean, and they are lovely, but there is only the one in the Valley Crest pool, which is closed due to COVID around our area. It would be great to be able to have some splash pads for the kids around here too. Are there any plans to add splash pads to Pierrefonds west of Saint-Charles? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Conti, for the question. It is relevant because, as you know, with our administration, through the years, we've been able to do major improvements, not only on our road infrastructure, but particularly in our parks, to allow for the public to not only participate in the different sports that are offered in our community, but also to have the free services that we're used to For example, Valley Crest Pool, Versailles Pool, that's to come next year. And of course, the different splash pads, as you've seen throughout the territory, with the latest one that we did at Cyril McDonald Park. We also have in mind in the planning process, because before any of this takes place, we have to make sure that we examine the demographics in the different areas to make sure that we're placing this infrastructure in areas that will be used by particularly the younger families. And in fact, in 2021, which is next year, we have one that will be planned and installed at Deauville Park. As you know, that is situated on Gouin Boulevard, facing the water filtration plant. And so that is an area that is going to be built next year. We also have, because we always like to plan in 2 to 3 to 5 year increments when we do our park planning, as these things take time to be able to mobilize, find the appropriate funding, but also to make sure that we get it right. In 2022, we're also looking at placing a water park, splash pads, if you will, at Yule Park, as you know, which you can access either for Pierrefonds Boulevard, which is on Chicalo, on Troy, on Valentine. You have access points to all to that park from all that area. So here is a wonderful development of splash pads that we've seen have been popular in other areas. And so we've had a concerted effort with our administration to be able to, at least with the policy that we have regarding water games and pools and all of that infrastructure, to make sure that we spread it in an equitable way throughout our territory. And this is why the next two that are planned in the western portion. Thank you very much for the question.
Madame Imtro Gributz, when does the city enforce the cut of dead ash trees on Paquet Street in Pierrefonds?
Thank you very much for the question. We know that the Service des Grands Parcs de Montréal follows regular inspections to make sure that they identify the trees that need to be cut down. First of all, they evaluate and analyze, and then they issue a statement to the residents to give them the procedure of how to go about cutting these trees. We're not sure if this was done on your street. We will make sure that we verify with the city services to make sure that if it has been done, that the proper documentation was sent to the doors, and if it hasn't been done, to get a critical path and find out when this is proposed, to make sure that we at least advise the citizens of their roles and responsibilities when it comes down to cutting ash trees, not only to cut them down, whether there's a treatment required, and of course the time of year that you can do that. And that is something that we will make sure that we will identify as soon as possible. Thank you very much for your question.
Monsieur Jim D'Alessandro, Mr. Alessandro is referring to three properties, most particularly 12742 Fortin, 12766 Berry, and 12785 Rue Berry. And his concern is to know if the owners of these residences have obtained the required permits and paid the due fees for the work that was done on these property over the last years, since he had to ask permit and pay fees for the work done on his driveway and house after a fire in 2012. So he is referring to an email transmitted in 2016, to which apparently there was no follow-up.
Thank you, Mr. D'Alessandro, for the question. We know your file all too well, considering that it's taken all this time to be able to, if I understand correctly, resolve the issue regarding your property. I've asked once again for our services to reach out to you as soon as possible to try to at least guide you in the proper way and give you the information that you need to be able to move forward. As for these three addresses, because they don't belong to you, certainly we can't give you information like this here in this forum. However, you can always request an access to information. You can go on our website and do that either through email by calling 311, or you can call our services and we'd be happy to guide you in terms of how to go about an access to information to get what you need regarding these three and whether a permit was given for this work that was done on their properties. You can understand that that property belongs to someone else, and so we aren't able to give you that information like this. However, there is a process, and we'd be happy to follow that process through an access for information. And all the guidelines, again, are outlined through our website, or you can call my office directly, and my assistant would be happy to guide you to make sure how to go about that. Thank you, Mr. D'Alessandro.
Monsieur James Bond, given COVID-19 working restrictions the past few months, what percentage of borough employees are working from home? Have there been any layoff? If so, how many? And how does the council ensure that the civil service maintains productivity under these circumstances? Are there any effects on the activities of public works?
Mr. Bond, thank you very much for the question. And in fact, we have over 30, almost 35% of the employees that have been working 100% remotely from home. Once this pandemic took place or began in March, we made sure that we had an innovative approach to be able to not only address the issues of the citizens and make sure that the regular business was continuing, but also how do we reinvent ourselves and allow for the employees to work from home and give them the tools necessary. So the folks that were able to work and continue to work from home for that matter have been equipped with all the tools such as computers, remote access, and make sure that they can access all the day-to-day operating materials that they would need, for example, if they were here at the office. So this has been successful up until now. We also know that at the beginning, because there were such strict restrictions from the government, certainly we were working with limited teams, and Public Works only later, a few weeks after that, were able to deploy full teams, of course, respecting the sanitary measures. The operations, of course, and I'd be lying if I told you otherwise, were slow to start in the spring because of the pandemic, but since have regained their speed and have been able now to, for the last, over a month or so, month and a half or so, to be able to work with full teams with our public works forces, to be able to catch up on some of the work that was outstanding or not permitted by the government guidelines. And so this is something that we've continued to do. And the productivity for the employees has been there, because if you look at an example like urban planning, all the urban planners, the majority of them, have been working and have been practicing social distancing here at the office, have been meeting with the residents on rendezvous, with meetings that have been made in advance with the citizens, and have been meeting with them individually even before we opened our city hall and our offices in the front to greet the residents. And so we've been very, fortunate to be able to do that from here in Pierrefonds-Roxboro. We're certainly not at the stage where we were before the COVID. However, we are maintaining the services that are offered to the citizens in the best way that we can. There have been no layoffs with this pandemic, because everyone has been able to work in a different way, but to be able to offer the same services, if not in a different way, throughout our territory. And so this is what we continue to do up until such time that we find a safe environment for them to re-enter the workforce here at the borough. But in the meantime, the ones that can work from home, that are 100% working from home, are able to do that, and the ones that aren't at home are either physically through our public works or physically in the offices here at the Borough Hall. Thank you very much for the question, Mr. Bond.
Monsieur Ross Stitt, why should the citizens give $47,575 to the community group Ajoie without having any input into this decision? It is not a conflict of interest situation, since City Councilor Benoit Langevin is the founder, former coordinator of this group. Thank you in advance.
Thank you, Mr. Stitt, for the question. I think this is a question where you've asked before in the past, and I'm going to give you the same answer that I've given you before. The founder and former coordinator are exactly that. There is no conflict of interest from a councillor that once held this position. These programs that are offered through programs in Montreal that have strict criteria that Borough Council has no say, does not even know about any of the programs that are presented, as they are jointly sent to Montreal, that are analyzed by folks that don't even, work in the borough, and at the same time are also sent to the borough, where two of our coordinators also look at the different projects that are presented. And tonight I think we have 6 under one of the programs, and 2, I believe, in the other that are up for discussion and approval. And so in no way are any of these projects privy to council, and we do not have any say in any of the decisions that are made before they reach our desk like they are tonight. Having said that, Action Jeunesse de l'Ouest de l'Île, to what you're referring to, does exceptional work not only in our borough, but also does it throughout the West Island, as you know, and many of the other communities can also attest. It is a service that is needed in our community, as has been needed for a number of years, and has filled a gap in our community to allow to provide for services for youth up to 17 particularly that don't necessarily fit within the framework of the regular activities proposed by any community. And so the outreach that takes place by this organization, I'll let Monsieur Langevin complete what I have to say. The outreach that's done by this organization is something that we cannot take lightly. We know that what they do on the ground serves a desperate need in our community and allows for a lot of the youth that they interact with, the thousands of interactions that they have annually, to be able to integrate in some of the mainstream programs and make them available for them. Sur ça, Monsieur Langevin, si vous avez quelque chose à ajouter, ça serait apprécié.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to add, you've been pretty clear about the non-conflict of interest. There has never been a conflict of interest since the beginning of my mandate towards AJWA. AJWA made all the protocols clear when I left. And now, I mean, it's been 3 years, and the time I spend counseling and helping other community organizations is that everyone is treated at the same level now. Council gives money, as the mayor was saying, to AJWA. It's really because of a question of criteria. It's a question of having a mandate, a mission that fits into many programs that are available downtown and that we need to get here in the borough of Pierrefonds-Roxboro, and that we need to deliver as services to some of our most vulnerable teenagers and young adults of this community. I'm very happy with the management that is in place right now with AJWA and with many of our community organizations that are running all of these programs and that are doing a terrific job, especially in these harsh times of COVID-19. COVID has been very hard on our teenagers, on our young adults, as some of our news that I've been expressing. Now school is going to start again. We hope that our teenager will be able to find a bit of normalcy in the future. So on that, Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything else to add other than to congratulate all these organizations that are going to get some grants tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Langevin. I wanted to add as well, Mr. Stitt, that in 2020, the City of Montreal made available $2.1 million for the 19 boroughs that benefit from this program in the family policy, a family policy that I created and we created with my administration when I was on the executive, so I know it very well. And I also know that the criteria set in place for the organizations, all of them across the island of Montreal, to apply for this grant money is very strict, and the follow-up is complete to be able to make sure that the money is being used in the best possible way to benefit the ones that are most in need. And so we're very proud of these contributions that not only AJWA gets, but a series of other organizations that you will hear tonight that will also benefit from this envelope that needed desperately in our community. Thank you, Mr. Stitt.
Monsieur Luc Marion. Pavement repairs in Gouin Boulevard between Coursol and Descageux, closer to Coursol. I have noticed markings on the patches that have been designated as needing patch repairs again. This is the third such patch repairs just this year. I contacted the city twice already reporting it. It has been under repair yearly for a decade now. Question, when will the city finally designate the whole section of about 300 feet for complete pavement repair and mostly drainage repair and possible under pavement pipes to fix the problem for good? Extra suggestion, that is still the only Gouin section without completed sidewalk to get to the park above Coursol. Regards.
Thank you, Mr. Marion, for the question. In fact, I agree with you. It is probably one of the worst stretches that we know in our community, and I always quote, and I'm always corrected, we have over 250, 270 or so kilometers of residential streets in our community. So you can imagine that few hundred meters that are in that, or 100 meters or so that are there, are a bit problematic for us, because we know that there are structural issues with that area. This is why the immediate solution for that area is to make sure that we compact it and make sure we patch asphalt in that area to make it smoother and safer for the drivers, not only the drivers, the pedestrians, but also the many bike riders that go through that area that is near the filtration plant. But there's also another step that we're looking at in 2021, where we are looking at removing and resurfacing that area to make sure that not only that area, but we're looking at from Descageux to Noël to make sure that we resurface that stretch of Gouin to at least allow us a number of years, a few years, up until 2025 to be able to do a bottom-up restructuring of that street, and that involves all the infrastructure. And so the idea is that, yes, it seems like patchwork. Yes, it's taken this long. However, now we've identified that it is a problematic area that needs more than just a simple paved job, for example, to be able to move forward. And so the first step will be to compact and patch the areas that are marked, as you've mentioned in your request. The second one is next year to be able to resurface from Descageux to Noël and do a temporary, if you will, resurfacing, which takes 2 to 3 years and will last that long and be safer than what it is now. And then in 2025, give us enough time up until then to be able to do all the engineering reports and everything that's necessary to be able to build bottom up. And so we need to make sure that we get it right. And this is unfortunately the reality of that stretch of Gouin. So again, I apologize about the length of time that it's taken, but it's a complicated issue that we're dealing with internally to be able to find the right solution for that place. And we know that it is something that we are gradually working towards redoing it. And when the bottom-up solution is going to take place in 2025, well, then that is when, at the same time, we're looking at, for example, these sidewalks and other solutions that we have in mind for that area to be able to safely navigate through that area and access the parks and green spaces in especially the western part of Pierrefonds-Roxboro. Thank you very much for taking the time to write to us, Mr. Marion.
Alors, ceci met fin à la période de questions. On peut passer à l'adoption de l'ordre du jour.
Merci.